It's your Thursday daily delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Basically an all playoffs edition of Daily Delivery today. Chip Scoggins joining me in just a minute here to talk Wolves and Wild. Do a little bit of Twins at the end because, of course, just when I start to worry about their offense, they score 10 runs in Boston and win that game. But some final thoughts on that and where they're maybe headed this year. But this time right now is really predicated on the playoffs. Wolves and Wild, same night Wednesday, going to be the same night Friday. They're both playing at home Sunday again at the same, roughly the same time, one right after the other. So these guys are going to dominate the headlines for the next several days. And so I brought in Chip Scoggins right after the game, late, and so this could come to you bright and early on Thursday, late to talk about those games, talk about Dean Evason's decision to play Marc-Andre Fleury, which I did not agree with, and I did not agree with his post-game assessment either. We'll get to that after I talk to Chip. But right now, let's get into me and Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist. The pain that many people felt tonight is still very fresh, Chip. We watched both of those games. It is late on Wednesday night. Wild lose, Wolves lose. Maybe not in the manner we would have expected, though. A lot of storylines from both of those games. Anthony Edwards over 40 points. The Wolves make a big comeback but fall short against Denver. Karl-Anthony Towns played, but you might not have known it based on his line score. We'll get into that in a little bit, but the Wolves down 2-0 in that series. But Chip, we got to start with the Wild. They lose 7-3 to Dallas, and no real shame in they're coming back to Minnesota now 1-1 in the series, but the decision, Chip, to by Dean Evason, presumably in tandem with Bill Guerin to a certain degree, on playing Marc-Andre Fleury in Game 2 after what we saw from Filip Gustavsson, had 51 saves the other night in that 3-2 overtime win. I get that they've been rotating these guys. I get that Fleury was pretty good down the stretch. I get that maybe, Gustavsson, you don't want to wear him out after that, long, big performance the other night, but man, I was shocked that they went with Fleury, and the second guessing can begin.
Whatever happened to sticking with a hot goalie?
Right.
I mean, just on his, Gustafsson had a record, a historic performance, 51 saves.
Yeah, he was one of the only goalies to ever have that many saves in a playoff debut, and
it's not like it was a back-to-back. I mean, he had a day off.
Yeah, they had a day off. Yeah,
I mean. Dallas played their goalie again.
Sure did.
Yep,
they sure did.
I understand, and Dean has said this all along, that they're not going to deviate from what they've done down the stretch. I mean, I think there in March, it was every other game. They flip-flopped, and he opened himself up for, this was either going to be a stroke of genius or it was going to backfire spectacularly. I didn't think it was going to be anything between. And I just thought Fleury looked, he hasn't played in a week?
Yeah, right.
And I just don't understand, unless he comes out and tells us we're still waiting on the post game. Unless he comes out and says Gustafsson was exhausted after that. I mean, I just don't understand the rationale. I mean, you always hear stick with the hot goalie. There's nothing in that performance. Yes, it went to a second overtime, but you had a day of rest yesterday. I don't know that playing tonight was going to, not make him fresh coming back for Game 3.
No, this
was an opportunity to really put some force, show your force in this series. And if you could come back up 2-0, because here's the thing, you knew you were going to get a hard push from the Stars. You knew they were going to play desperate, right? So you're going to put a cold goalie in there against that. And let's be honest, nobody played good in front of him. The Wild were horrendous defensively. They were sloppy. They looked out of sorts. I mean, it just didn't look anything like themselves in this game. So it wasn't all Fleury's fault. But I felt like, what were you saying? 3 of the goals? The one when it went, the third one for sure was where it went 5-hole there. I mean, that, after you score to make it 2-1,
right before right at the end of the first period, then they give it right back in the start of the second.
Yeah, and it's it's like on a soft goal, that's just a bad goal, and then you're scrambling the rest of the way, and then you scored goals 11 seconds apart, and you're like, okay, we got to it's back to being a game now. Then they come back and another one. I think Hines had a breakaway on that in that sequence too, right? Was that his second goal?
Yeah.
So the defense let him down, but again, it goes back to Dean's initial, decision to do this. I don't understand, why you don't just stick with the hot guy.
Yeah. Well,
and he's young. It's not like this is a 38-year-old guy. You're not going to wear him out.
And to me, it's like, I think it's a lot of the things you just touched on. And to me, it's like you give Dallas the opportunity to gain some confidence, right? Because even if Fleury plays well, and you had the expectation that he could play well in this game, he's a veteran. He's been here. He's played really reasonably well in the stretch. But like you said, it's the hot goal. You bring someone else in, all of a sudden Dallas has got to have more confidence. Like, hey, the guy that stopped 51 shots only let in 2 the other night. He's not there anymore. This other guy, I don't care what he's done in his career. He's a different face. He's a different look. He's a different goalie. That's got to give them confidence right off the bat. It's like when someone's rolling along, pitching a shutout in baseball. I don't know if Rocco Baldelli made the goalie decision tonight or what, but it's like when someone is rolling along and you're like, okay, let him go. He's going to be fine. And then even if you bring in a good pitcher to replace him, the lineup's like, oh man, we don't have to face that guy anymore. Let's see what we can do against this guy. And sometimes the floodgates open, and that seems like what happened against Fleury. And you're right, they did not play well in front of him. It was a sloppy overall game. It felt like the very early part of the season where they hadn't quite kind of figured out they needed to play a certain way, and they were still trying to win the game 6-5, and it just wasn't working for them. But I mean, just the decision itself, it's puzzling. Goalies play the whole playoffs all the time, and I get that Gustavsson hasn't played a lot of consecutive games this year, and they did rotate. But man, if it's not his net the rest of the way, then I'm going to have a lot more questions about that.
Well, I think that unless Gustafsson just completely falls apart, he's the guy going forward now. And here's the thing, people are going to say, well, they came back with a split. That's about you can't argue with that. But Mike, we see series pivot on one game all the time. And this is a team that went out and scored 7 goals, the most goals that the Wild have given up in their playoff history. Who knows what that does to Dallas's confidence now? And who knows what that does for, the Wild, because they didn't play well.
No.
And so I don't think you can ever be content with just doing saying, no, we got to split down there. No, it's like, you got to as I said, you could have really put a stranglehold on this thing.
Yeah.
If you go down there and play, if you double down in game 2 and are really sharp, and Gustafsson, is brilliant again, and now you come back home 2-0. So yeah, it's just I'm curious to see like what the logic is. I'm just guessing here.
Yeah.
My guess is they're going to say they want to make sure they keep Gustafsson fresh.
Yeah, and the Fleury's played well. They've been rotating these guys, and I get the on the base level you can get the logic. It's just like it's playoffs though. The logic doesn't really matter at this point. You play your best guys, like you said. You have a chance to go up 2-0 in the series. You can be happy with the split or satisfied with the split. Hey, guess what? The Wild's never been up 2-0 in a series. How's that worked out for them in their playoff history?
Well, that's the thing, and with the days off and the rest. And him being a young goalie, I mean, to me, I just say go with the hot guy. Go with the guy who's been one of the best goalies in the entire league this entire year, and who just was brilliant in game 1. I just, for the life of me, can't understand why you would deviate from that just because you've had this rotation all year and you feel like that was successful for you. I just feel like when you get into playoffs, you ride the wave of momentum with what you have going.
Now, I mean, to touch on a few more things before we get to some Wolves stuff. I mean, obviously, like we said, he wasn't the only problem here. They're dealing with some. I mean, the lineup questions up and down were a little curious. Like he switched up a lot of the lines. He had Boldy playing center on the second line. He moved Foligno up there. No Hartman after he had the game-winning goal the other night. You got a lot of things that were a lot of moving pieces. A lot of smartest guy in the room kind of thing that just didn't work out in this case.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, so I think some of it probably was injuries.
Yeah,
sort of forced his hand on some of this.
Sure,
the Hartman injury. I don't know that we saw that one coming.
Right.
Maybe some did, but but yeah, you had to shuffle your lines.
You still don't have Eck in this game either, so
yeah, and it will be interesting to see if he comes back for Game 3 here Friday night. But the irony is Dean took a lot of criticism because he didn't make much changes last year.
Right.
He kind of just there wasn't a whole lot of adjustments.
Well, because Fleury wasn't playing all that well. Like when you make a change when he's not playing well, then don't make a change when he is playing well. When Gustavsson is playing well,
I know that's the thing. It's like this is the exact opposite of the approach he took last year. So I don't get it. But it'll be interesting to see. Now, I mean, obviously, Gustafsson is going to start Friday night.
I would hope so.
There's no, but but I'm curious to see how they got to play better. I mean, this was just not a good performance. I mean, they just were not good.
They were not tight. They were not the tight kind of tight checking buttoned up team they've been. They just were not. They were too loose.
And I don't know if that was a product of, hey, they got the one win down there, and we've seen it. It's human nature. You see
desperate, and the more desperate team tends to win Game 2 a lot. So
exactly. I mean, you knew you were going to get the Stars, that kind of effort from them. So so the Wild has to come back and they have to shore it up. They got to be tighter. They got to play like we're accustomed to seeing, which was not them tonight. And just see if they can bounce back and kind of get the momentum back Friday night.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Looked like we were headed for 2 blowouts on Wednesday night, but Wolves actually made a game of it. Didn't make a series of it because they still didn't win a game. It's 2-0 Denver going back here now Friday. And by the way, things are going to be pretty nuts here this weekend with Wild, Wolves, and Twins all here this weekend. I think the Saints are even here this weekend too. It's a lot going on. All those games kind of happening at once on Friday and then staggered on Sunday. But the Wolves actually, after a terrible most of the first half, woke up, found some offense. A lot of it, Anthony Edwards getting aggressive. He was great. Yeah. He had 41 points. I mean, if not for Jamal Murray really going off and kind of helping Denver save that game in the fourth quarter, it could have been a different outcome. But the biggest takeaway from this game still, even though they made it a game, is A, how slow they started, and B, how bad Karl-Anthony Towns was again. Like, if he plays better, they might win that game. What do you have? 10 points in this game on 3 of 12 shooting?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, we're going to focus on Ant, and he was great, and he looked like the Ant that you want to see, the star that takes over. But this is another clunker for Towns. I mean, first half, 0 of 4 shooting, 2 points. He made 2 free throws, 4 turnovers, 3 fouls. I mean, he looked so out of sorts again. Now he came back and he made a couple shots there early in the third quarter. He had the driving layup and then the 3. But Mike, in the first 2 games here this series, he has 21 points combined. 21 points, 9 rebounds. I mean, or 9 turnovers. He's shooting, if I can do my math real quick in my head, he made 5 shots first game, 3 today. That's 8 for 20 something. So he's not shooting the ball well. He just looks out of sorts. And this is a continuation of what we've seen previous years, where he just, when he gets to the playoff time, he's a lot of times he's in foul trouble. But we saw him miss shots today. He had a layup that was when the game was sort of tight there at the end. He missed the layup and he's screaming at the official again. So, if they're going to have any chance against him, he's got to bring more to the fight than what he is right now. I mean, it can't just be Ant, because I don't think I know they're the number 1 seed, but I don't think Denver's, this, inconquerable team. I mean, they're not very good defensively.
The West doesn't have a great team. They've got a lot of good teams. They don't have a great team.
Yeah. And, Denver's not very good defensively.
No,
I mean, the third quarter was atrocious. And, to Ant's credit, he took, he started driving the basket and he was getting some easy layups. I mean, he scored 40 points in the quarter. And they go through lulls too, where, I don't know if they get a little loosey-goosey with their shot selection, but I just don't think they're a great team. I think they're good, but I don't think they're, this superstar team. So I think there's going to be frustration on the Wolves' part because this is a winnable game. As bad as they were in the first half, they had a lead in this game at late, and so there should be frustration because this was a game they could have taken.
By the way, Evason has talked at this point and talked about the goalie decision and said it's what we do. We've done it all year. I'll play some more of that audio later on in the podcast, but I guess he's going to keep evaluating this. Maybe stick with the plan going forward. So they're going to evaluate it game by game. I don't get it. If Gustavsson wins game 3 and plays well, I don't see how there is any way on earth you go back to Fleury in game 4. I just don't get it.
How could you, Mike? If he wins or even if they lose and he plays well, you stick with him.
Yes.
I mean, Fleury gave up 7 goals. Now, granted, we'll say it; they weren't all his fault, but a number of them were.
Yeah,
and
enough of them were. I didn't even pull out the stat from Natural Stat Trick. The expected goals for the Dallas Stars tonight were 3.25. The expected goals for the Wild were 3. Wild scored 3, Dallas scored 7. That's all you need to know about this game. That a lot of the goals that you would expect to go in, about the same number went in for the Wild, and the Dallas got twice as many as you would expect for the quality of the chances they were getting.
Yeah. So there you have it. So I mean, of course he's going to stick by his, decision publicly.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to come out and say you made, the wrong call, but
right.
But I was more curious if he just says, "Hey, this is what we do with rotation." I thought he was going to say, "We're trying to keep, we expect this to be a long series, and we're trying to keep Gustavsson fresh." I mean,
yeah. I'll play the full audio a little later. So it's I don't know. I don't get it. But anyway, back to the Wolves. I just saw that scrolling across Twitter. Back to the Wolves. I mean, Cat. I don't know. I had a friend of mine DM me during the game saying you can tell this is the end for Cat. This is the end of Cat in Minnesota. The players can tell. I don't know if we're there yet. I mean, we've talked plenty about what happens this offseason. Do they need to move on from this too big experiment? But I mean, it's not so much just the too big experiment, and it's not just this series. Like, Cat's playoff history, while fairly brief, is not very good.
No,
he's done this enough times in the playoffs, whether it was, the Butler year, whether it was last year being inconsistent against Memphis, being bad in that play-in game against the Clippers, and now disappearing in these first 2 games. And we give him a little bit of a pass, I guess, this year because he missed so much time, but this is a trend that's got to be worrying to them, because this is a guy that, he's a max player. He's supposed to be one of your cornerstone guys. If this guy's not getting done in the playoffs, what do you do?
And then I do wonder, Mike, I wonder if he's starting to feel that pressure.
Yeah, maybe.
Because he looks like he's really forcing it a lot of times and taking some wild shots, trying some just kind of wild passes. And so I wonder if he knows that he hasn't performed well and it's on his mind, and he's trying to, really, be assertive and do things that maybe he's, not capable of right now.
Yeah.
But he's also, the other thing is he's missed some open shots.
Yeah.
Especially game 1.
Yeah.
He missed some open shots, and he kind of brushed it off as like, "Hey, those are good shots. I normally make them," which, as I said, if he had a long track record of success in the playoffs, you'd say, "Okay, I'll buy that. I'll buy that for this night." But the fact that he struggled so much in the playoffs, I'm not sure I'm buying it. That it's just a 1-game blip.
No. A few more things. My neighbor Tom, I asked for Twitter questions, Twitter responses. He said the thin bench really hit them in the 4th. The players looked tired. Ant gutted it out, but nobody else looked like they had much energy. And we can't forget that. I mean, they're basically playing 7 guys right now with no Nasri. 8. Jalen Noel did play tonight, but the guys like, with no Naz, no Jaden McDaniels, they're really missing Jaden McDaniels right now in this series.
Well,
he would be such a big piece of what they're trying to do here.
Well, especially when you dig such a big hole. I mean, they had to work so hard just to get back to even, and you could tell once they got it back to even. I mean, they looked exhausted out there. They're all bended. So I think there is probably something to that it's just going to be hard for them because they're so thin right now in numbers that, these guys are going to have to. But when you fall behind by 21 and you have to make up so much ground, you're going to run out of gas.
Yeah, they did. And they shot the ball pretty well tonight. They shot 50%. They shot 45% from 3, 83% from the line. Like, you couldn't really quibble with the final results. I think Denver was better in this game than they were in game one. They just got beat by a better team. Now, can they make this a series? Can they not just win game three, but be threatening in game four? Because I feel like these series go this way sometimes, where the better team wins the first two at home, then the other team kind of pops up and gets one in game three because the foot comes off the gas and you're desperate. But then it kind of gets then game four, business order is restored. Can they make this a series? First of all, can they avoid a sweep? Second of all, can they make this a real series?
Well, I think they'll I think they'll win a game here just because, again, I don't think Denver's that.
Yeah.
I think they could put up a clock or two. And we saw Ant, if he's got his confidence back and he's feeling healthy again, if he can kind of sustain that and carry that through, I could see him, really feasting at home. But again, to me, it comes back to Towns. They got to have two guys.
Yeah.
They need Towns. Like we saw, in the Oklahoma City playing game where Cat was great. And then other guys fed off that. So he's when he's playing well, it just makes everyone else. It opens up everything else for other guys, right? And so if he's not going to pull out of this little slump that he's in right now, I think it'll be a quick series. I think, the Wolves can win one at home, but I just, if he's going to score 10 points and have a bunch of turnovers every game, then I just don't know how they're going to beat this team.
Yeah. Last thing, what do you think about the report? Not even just a report. The Wizards are moving on, looking for a new general manager. They fired Tommy Shepard on Wednesday. Already, Tim Connolly's name surfacing as a potential replacement. He's a Baltimore native. He was offered the job in 2019, turned it down, and that's when Shepard got hired. He's a guy that's only 1 year into a Timberwolves tenure and not a great one so far based on the Rudy Gobert outcome so far. What do you make of this? I'm trying to wrap my head around how this would happen.
Does that organization get Google? Can they Google the
right?
Can they Google the Gobert trade?
Right.
That would be bold of him if there's anything to it. I mean, I'm sure there are some fans that would be thrilled, but it'd also be
all of them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but then you'd also say, you know what? Wait a second now. This guy in 1 year did this and then bolts.
He's got to clean up his own mess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There, that would be. I don't know how much validity there is to this, but it would. The timing sure is interesting.
Yes,
and that would probably be a tough sell to a fan base, knowing what people think around the league of the Gobert trade right now.
Yeah, tough sell to the Washington fan base. I mean, not to the Minnesota fan base.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, that's I don't know. It's a story worth watching. Chris Hine wrote about it. I've seen a couple other people mentioning Connolly's name, so we'll see about that. Obviously, the playoff series has to play out, and time for some redemption there. But thought that was an interesting one as well. Chip, go get some sleep. I know you got to write still.
I got to write.
Get something get something fresh for the morning, just like this podcast. But appreciate it. We'll be watching the games, and they're never dull, are they?
They are always interesting.
Yeah.
They're always interesting. So,
right.
Yes.
Thanks, Chip.
All right, brother. Appreciate it.
And like I said with Chip, and like I said at the start of the show, Dean Evason was asked by reporters after the game a few different variations on, what was the decision, what was the thought process in starting Fleury in this game. Basically, what more does Gustavsson have to do after 51 saves in game one? Would they keep going with this tandem going forward? Here is what Evason had to say to those various questions during his availability post game after the game Wednesday.
It's what we do, right? We've done it all year. It's the game. Nothing was on Flower tonight. It was all on us. I don't know how to answer that because both goalies have earned, obviously, to be in the net. We made the decision to go with Flower, and like I said, they had a shorthanded breakaway and 2 power play goals. What would you like Flower to do, right? He made some incredible saves for us. We just spoke of all the odd man rushes. that we gave up. I'll have to just remember back. Another one was a breakaway. Another one was a power play. So, that's what, 5? So, we gave them their opportunities. They took them too. Like I said, they played really well. But we didn't do the right things in front of our goaltender tonight. It's the same as we always do. We talk about it after the game. We'll talk about it tonight. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll make a decision.
Now, listen, I agree with some of what he's saying. It was not all on Fleury, like Chip and I talked about. They did not do him any favors with the way they played. But, like I said, with the expected goals stat, they were basically even. That was an even game across the board. If we're talking about expected goals, naturalstattrick.com. Marc-Andre Fleury let in 2 or 3 really soft goals. Those are the ones you've got to have back. Those are the ones where he could absolutely help them. And even the tough saves that he could have made, he gave up 7. I don't think Filip Gustavsson gives up 7 goals in that game. So when Dean Evason justifies the decision by saying that game was not on Flower, it wasn't all on Flower, but a different goalie probably yields a different result in that game. Not saying the Wild wins that game with Gustavsson in goal instead of Fleury, but I think the decision becomes magnified, and when you double down on it and you say, you know what, this is just what we do, and I didn't think it was on Fleury at all. Of course he's going to defend his decision. Of course he's going to defend his goalie, and to a degree it was not his fault. Again, teammates did not do him favors. They gave him a lot of odd man rushes, a lot of bad play in the zone there. But I thought Fleury was bad in this game, and unless like Chip and I said, unless something drastic happens and Gustafsson is terrible in Game 3 or somewhere along the line gets hurt or something like that, I don't see how you go back to Fleury at all in this series. I just don't see how that is how you are going to play the rest of the way. I know Fleury was pretty good down the stretch. Gustafsson was good almost the whole season. Second best goals against average, second best save percentage in the entire league. 51 saves in Game 1. I still, to this day, I don't think I'll ever understand the decision to go with Fleury in Game 2. And for the Wild's sake, I hope it does not end up costing them the series. Now, we also did hear from Chris Finch after that Wolves 122-113 lost to Denver. Some good things happened that game. I'll get to Finch coming to that, but first he was asked how you get Karl-Anthony Towns going after 2 very rough games to start this series. Here was Finch on that.
It's got to kind of maybe just simplify things a bit, catch, shoot, catch and drive. They're all over him out there. He's got to probably play a little quicker, to draw the fouls. They're definitely fouling him. They're holding him every single time. They're wrestling him off his spot. We got to continue to do. I got to continue to do a good job or a better job of, finding him and getting him opportunities to catch the ball in space. He's not a lot of space around him right now. So.
I think all those are good ideas, but also it comes down to Cat's got to play better. And like Chip and I talked about, this is a playoff problem for Cat that goes beyond this series. It goes beyond any kind of 1 or 2 game dip. He's been up and down and mostly down in a lot of these playoff games. He's got to find his game. He's got to find some sort of confidence, some sort of gear that gets him going in these games. I don't think that's all on Chris Finch to help him. He is a veteran. He is in his 8th season in the NBA. This is not a young player anymore. This is a guy who you should be able to count on to produce in the playoffs, and we are just not seeing that from Cat. Now, the flip side was Anthony Edwards was great. I thought Rudy Gobert was pretty good in this game. I thought they competed pretty well. And, Finch was basically asked, does that give you confidence the way you played, especially in the second half, going back to Minnesota? Here was his answer to that question.
The whole game. I mean, in terms of offense, like I said, we found our rhythm offensively, did a lot of things that we knew would lead to shots. We found the series. We found the physicality that we needed. They did what they needed to do. They're a championship caliber team. They held serve at their home floor, and now we got to go back and do the same.
So I guess the overarching theme from games 1 and 2 from both these teams is I guess not all hope is lost, especially in the case of the Wild. They go back with this 1-1. That's fine. I think it's an opportunity missed. I think it's a questionable series of decisions in this game, but all will be forgotten and forgiven if they win Game 3 on Friday night and take control of this series again. So not all hope is lost there. And for the Wolves, for 6 quarters, as someone jokingly said to me on Twitter, I was about to sell my playoff tickets at halftime. Basically didn't want to even go to those games in Minnesota. That series changed a little bit. It's not a series yet. The momentum momentum shifted in a game, but not for the series yet. It's still 2-0. The Wolves, in order to make this a series, have to win, obviously, Friday, and then they've got to put the same sort of effort into it on Sunday. If they can win Friday, that starts to put a little pressure on this thing. Maybe make this a series. I'll believe it when I see it, but what I saw in the last 28 minutes of this game on Wednesday gave me more hope, if you are a Timberwolves fan, that they can do that again Friday and come away with a win. So we'll see. Both those games happening Friday at the same time. It should be a fun night in the Twin Cities. Twins also playing Friday night. Let's finish with the cooler. They beat Boston 10-4. Joe Ryan 4-0 this season. Joey Gallo comes back from the injured list, hits a long home run. The offense suddenly pours on 10 runs just as I worry about them. Know what, though? I'm still worried about the offense because they have these bursts every now and then this year, and then it's right back to 2 runs, 3 runs. They've still scored 3 runs or fewer in 10 of their 18 games this season. I do worry ultimately that the pitching, and for as good as the pitching has been, I worry that the pitching is bound to regress to the mean more than the offense is bound to progress to the mean. So that's something I'm watching for, like I said the other day. But, of course, as soon as I mention it, they go out and score 10 runs. It's, of course, Murphy's law of averages, whatever you want to say. So got to give them their props, got to give them their due. They had a good game in Boston. They're 11-7. The pitching continues to be very good, especially the top 3 in that starting rotation, starting to look like they are a very formidable trio. So we'll see where that gets them. Maybe they don't have to score a lot of runs in those games, although they did on Wednesday night. That will do it for me today. Should have a bunch of good stuff coming up later this week. I think Nate Tice from The Athletic will be on Friday's show. Podcaster, writer, son of former Vikings head coach Mike Tice. Talked to him recently. Great interview with Nate, setting you up for the draft. And, of course, getting you guys ready for Games 3 for the Wild and Wolves on Friday. So I think Nate will be on Friday's show. And maybe some special editions over the weekend. We got to keep going, don't we? Playoffs, playoffs, playoffs. Until then, I'm Michael Rand, back at it again on Friday.